Thank you all for coming to this Meetup event on the topic of opportunity zones. My name is Carl Dakin. I am the host for tonight's program, and I wear multiple hats. I spend a good part of my time working with businesses and organizations in raising capital. I also lead projects from time to time, and I'm doing a lot of speaking and lecturing like I am tonight on different topics related to entrepreneurship and early stage capital formation. Tonight we're going to talk about community collaboration in the context of opportunity zones, and this is going to be a little bit different from talking about an individual opportunity zone business or an individual opportunity zone property. We're going to be talking about how the community can play a role in helping individual projects raise capital by working collaboratively, collectively, to do a number of things that will make these opportunities more visible to investors, will make them more attractive to investors, and hopefully stand out and shine, and therefore be a more likely target to receive investment than somebody who's trying to do this by themselves. So we'll start with that. This meetup has three primary functions that we're trying to do. First is information sharing. Since the tax bill was passed in December of last year, everybody's been trying to figure out what is an opportunity zone, how can I benefit tax-wise from investing, or how can I receive that investment into my business or property, or to a business or property within my community. And so we've been working within this meetup group to try to gather as much information as possible and make it available in a series of programs which we're doing approximately every 2 weeks. And then we also supported the Bridge to Opportunity Conference that was held on the 19th a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be supporting the Opportunity Zone Conference that Impact Initiative will be doing on March 11th of next year. It's possible there'll be another conference or special event between now and March 11th, but we'll have to see whether we actually learn enough to justify another conference, or we have a compelling reason to do that, which is that the economy slides downwards and forces a lot of money into these types of investments, and we need to speed up our game. So the second thing we're going to be talking about is case studies. Most of the programs going forward are going to be what's called deep dive, shared brainstorming of specific projects that are in existence, in motion, and everybody will have a chance to come ask questions or to make comments and to move things forward. I'm currently talking to a business in Fort Collins that has a partially occupied business space in an opportunity zone, and who is interested in trying to figure out how they may use this money to upgrade the property, to expand tenancy, expand functionality, and otherwise make this a highly desirable location for people who need to be in an opportunity zone in order to qualify for the tax incentives. And that will be on December 11th, and it'll be here at the same location from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. Lastly, we keep identifying issues. These are questions about how to make best use of opportunity zones. We're still continuing to collect questions faster than we're collecting answers, and we have a bunch of new ones almost all the time, and we'll have one I'll share later in the program. But any questions that you ask here today that cannot be answered at the moment, or not by somebody who's here in the audience, then we'll try to post those up and get you an answer later on, so that we can continue to add to the body of knowledge and make this all more workable situation for people in getting engaged in this. So to start with tonight's topic, opportunity zones allow community to benefit because what they're doing is they're redirecting money that might have gone back into Wall Street, money that might have gone back into a property, or money that might be sitting idle or underutilized in someone's retirement account or some type of a program. And the law was intended to generate economic activity in selected geographic areas. As you may know, earlier this year, each state was asked to designate certain geographic areas that they wanted to be designated. They created their list and submitted those to the Internal Revenue Service. And in May of this year, all of these areas were certified. And as far as we now know and understand, these are the only areas that will be available for the foreseeable future, next several years, that may benefit from Opportunity Zone investments. And communities see this as an opportunity to get that money into their neighborhood, get it into a specific property or business that is in their neighborhood, so that they can create jobs and they can address a variety of different types of issues that are experienced by the communities. I've been working on my list of common challenges that communities are facing, and there's no surprises in this list, but we talk about jobs first, then we get in, every community has mentioned housing, some have transportation issues, food, and that's local food, food deserts, quality food, food security, all fall under that. Healthcare runs a range from anything from opioid addiction to lower cost of healthcare, access to healthcare, things along that line, and preventative healthcare. Internet access is showing up in a lot of the list, where if you don't have access to internet, high-speed internet, you are basically becoming a third world developing type of a country, because you don't have access to information markets. Your ability to compete is severely disadvantaged. Training and education tends to follow all this. We're seeing more emphasis on skills-based training rather than diplomas and degrees. We're looking for things that are more co-working activities where you're both training and working at the same time. And then number 8 on my list is infrastructure, power, water, and waste. We have a lot of systems that are commonly used in municipalities which are out of date or failing, or the cost of replacement is beyond anybody's ability to pay. And so we're looking at new technologies that can move buildings and even whole communities into a net zero profile with less environmental impact and less stress upon the government that is supporting that community. I have another category which I sometimes call rural, but can also be described as limited population and industries. Particularly the rural areas, you may have very few people to work with, which means your market sizes are automatically smaller in a hyperlocal. And at the same time, you may be a single industry town where if that industry goes away or fades or disappears, then you need to replace that with a brand new industry. And so jobs is typically the #1 complaint in a rural community, because there simply aren't the jobs today that there used to be when we were a more agrarian society. We have public safety. This again extends from drug use problems to all the issues of wildfires and protecting against wildfires, and also includes corrections. Yeah, once you get done with somebody who served their time, if you don't have a mechanism to bring them back in and transition into society, they'll have a tendency to repeat criminal conduct, and that's again a drag on the quality of life and safety of the citizenship. I put tourism on here. It seems that a greater and greater percentage of our net income is going into entertainment, particularly in retirement. And so tourism is a growing, climbing thing that can serve as an economic generator within a community. And lastly, access to capital. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about today is intended to address access to capital. It's not a panacea. It won't solve all the problems. And for those communities who don't get themselves prepared and ready to take advantage of opportunity zones, they're going to miss out. And for those communities who are not designated as opportunity zones, they're going to face an even greater struggle, because if you have a choice between two communities side by side, and one's an opportunity zone, one's not, the smart money is going to go with the better tax incentives over time.
So to address any one of those, do they have to be presented as an investment opportunity? in the context of this discussion?
So the question is, and the way the law is written, you're going to be having people who roll over their capital gains and select to invest them in a property or a business that's within an opportunity zone. Now, from a community perspective, if that business is going to solve one of these problems, or if the property development is going to solve one of these problems, they get a double win out of this. So obviously, if you bring money into a business and they hire 20 people, all these secondary benefits occur. So not just the return on investment to the investor, but the community is getting all these benefits as well. If it's a business that is shipping everything out of state, or it's not doing something, it may be doing fine in its own stead, but it's not really becoming a contributing component of the community. So as a community, if I'm a leader in that community, I'm going to be looking for those projects which will stand to benefit my community by addressing one or more of these particular issues. And larger projects will have an ability to do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these at one time. But it's a matter of, if you want to call it portfolio management from the community perspective. What businesses and organizations do I want in my community who are contributing to the better health of my community and not just present? So in this case, the challenge that we're looking at, which is being evidenced by ongoing conversations, is that most communities lack the time, money, or skills to take advantage of opportunity zones. It isn't that they don't like them, but in talking with different people and several communities over the last few weeks, some of them go, I have no idea what you're talking about. They're not aware that opportunity zones exist, and they're not doing anything about it. Some say, well, we've heard about it, we're going to get around to it later. And the problem there is if there is an economic slump, crash, market correction, anything that causes people to get out of their current capital investments and reinvest them in something else, these communities need to be ready for that money to come into a business or property in their community. If this occurs, as some people are predicting, anywhere from tomorrow to 2 years from now, then in that case, the community needs to be having all this put together. If they're not doing anything now, they may not get there. And even if they want to get there and they are aware of what's going on, they may lack the money or the skills to put this together. So one of the things that is on the table right now is the state of Colorado, through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, has recommended that every community put together a prospectus which represents basically a description of all the businesses and properties in that community who are seeking opportunity zone investment. So this can work like a collective portfolio or brochure or promotional material on behalf of the community. And towards this goal, then, they've arranged with the Department of Labor and Affairs, DOLA, to do matching grants to these communities of up to $25,000 can come from the state, that can be matched with either private or public money, but the request has to come from a government agency within the community. So right now, a number of people, including myself, are talking with communities across the state of Colorado about what they can do to build a prospectus to take advantage of this grant that's currently available, and then to put together a prospectus that would help tell the story of the community and profile and support each of the individuals, businesses and properties that are the subject matter of what's going on here. But the smaller the community, the less experience they have in economic development, the less their familiarity with some of these businesses and how they work, the less they have the capability of doing a great job of promoting them. And the reason why this is important, as I was commenting earlier, is there's approximately 8,700 opportunity zones designated in 50 states and the territories of the United States who are now eligible to get these tax incentives for investors if an investment is made according to the rules. Each of these will have multiple businesses and properties that can be developed, and each of them are going to stand up at the same time and start shouting, like on the stock market floor of the New York Stock Exchange, where everybody's screaming at the same time, going, give me money, give me money, give me money. And it's going to be very difficult for an investor who is not set up correctly to even see most of these opportunities, let alone assess them, or is willing to take the time to do more than a cursory examination of that opportunity and then select that winner like a lottery ticket and go, I'm going to give my money to you. So what the communities are doing is, by elevating the entire community, they're making all the ones in their community more visible, and therefore hopefully they'll be seeable. And then by the degree to which each of these are prepared to tell their story, have them stand out and compete with everybody else who's looking for money. So it is very important for the communities if they're going to do this. And if you have a business or property that you're looking to develop, you can do it on your own. And it may turn out that you know all the people you need to know in order to raise all the money that you need, and you're perfectly fine by yourself. But a lot of these businesses and properties are going to need help. They're going to want a show of force. They're going to show and demonstrate they're part of a larger effort, and that the community is standing behind them, and they're not just going it all alone. So what each community needs to do, even before a prospectus, is they should put together a capital campaign plan for their community and what they're trying to do. Now, a lot of communities will have this. They'll have an economic development plan. They may have a master plan for real estate and so forth. And this is either work has been done in part or not at all. But very rarely is this tied to raising capital. So as they may have some of the fundamental information, but it's not been placed in the context of, let's make an investment. What are we going to offer within the framework of that investment? Who are the investors likely to be, and placing this together so that there is a true plan with determined and outcomes of what they want to accomplish within this time frame. And without that, then basically we're just going to be all standing up and shouting, give me money, give me money, give me money. And in the noise volume of all the other groups that are doing the same thing, you won't be heard. This is the community prospectus that I mentioned earlier. This is something every community should be doing anyhow, and some of the best communities in Colorado have been doing this continuously year after year. Sometimes it's done within the Economic Development Center, sometimes it's done within the local chamber, sometimes it's done at a regional level, but they commonly will collect this information and make it available. It may be community-wide, it may be industry-specific. So as an example, right now, Grand Junction is working to open up an industrial park for outdoor recreation. And anything that deals with outdoor recreation is attractive to them as a potential tenant in the park to drive this as an industry platform within that particular community. And they've been working on their prospectus for a few months now. Whereas a lot of communities haven't even started the conversation on this. But the prospectus will be, to begin with, it's just a description of all the businesses and properties. But the idea is that you want to put this up on the internet where it's accessible to everybody, and then you're going to want to place it in a location where more people are going to see it. And that means that they're going to need to work on essentially a strategy for making sure this is visible where the investors are located. So if you post up on your website and nowhere else, you may be the only person who sees that particular prospectus. You have to get it out there into the communication channels where everybody's going to have a chance to see this.
Is the state of Colorado helping with that specifically?
Yes. Once you get a prospectus done for a community, you can go to the Office of Economic Development and they will list that prospectus on their site. So if anybody who's coming into Colorado or even within Colorado says, I'd like to look at all the prospectuses out there, I've got the time to look around, you can go to their site, and they're supposed to have that up here very soon.
Okay.
Now, my expectation is that we may have people come in from out of state who may go to our Colorado State website first, but most people, my experience has been, are coming in because they have a particular affinity with an industry or a social cause or some other reason, and their keyword searching is going to have to find these words in these prospectuses, where there'll be opportunity zone and controlled growing environments, or it's going to be something on autonomous cars or something that's going to cause them to see this particular thing. So the work that they do in the internet and digital marketing is going to be very important to make sure that the right words are there so that they are searchable on the internet. Then it's going to be necessary to build a relationship with the investors, and this is where most investment campaigns fall down, regardless of size or variety, structure, source, or whatever, is that there's a general rule that people do not invest in people they don't know. The concept of going on stage and getting 3 rich people to write you a check or to post up on an internet site and assume that everybody's going to come running to give you a check is simply not real or practical in any manner. What we have learned in working with investment crowdfunding here at the federal level in the state of Colorado is there's got to be some minimal relationship to begin with, and that relationship's got to have an element of trust that's strong enough to support the following investment decision. Now, the amount of trust necessary is lower if you're making a smaller dollar amount and it's something that you're very familiar with. So if you're investing in a business who's making your favorite nutrition bar, then it's not a big leap to make $100, $200 investment into that particular company with only a passing knowledge of the management team and who they are. Once you start talking about putting money into a piece of property and they're looking for $10,000, $20,000, $25,000, then you're going to want to know a lot about who the managers of the property are, what's their experience and track record. Are they trustworthy people? Are they bad actors in verse? All those kinds of things. So this is where most campaigns die, is at this point, is that they don't know who to talk to. When they do know who to talk to, they don't have a conversation. When they have a conversation, it's not meaningful. The conversation is not building trust. It's not laying the groundwork so that you can ultimately tag that person and go, I'm looking for money. This is what I'm trying to do. This is why you should invest in me, not just because I need the money, but because of all these financial and non-financial benefits that will accrue to an investor over time, and not just limited to the tax incentives under opportunity zones, but everything else that you can stack on the plate to make yourself more attractive than someone else who's trying to do the same thing.
So who represents that in a community, right? If they put the prospectus together, they talk, I mean, is it a single point of contact? Is it every single business that you put out there in the prospectus, there's a kind of lead person there that represents that? I mean, who's bringing the people in the know to these investors to build that trust?
Well, the question is, who's out there who has accountable for bringing, establish these relationships and bringing them in to the community? And the answer to that is everyone. The short answer is, if you organize your community, you want to make sure that everyone is basically 1, 2, 3 degrees of freedom, no more than that, from everybody else. So obviously, if I'm in a community where everybody knows me already, this problem we don't have. Okay, but I'm assuming that we're going to be reaching over the wall into like a fishbowl, trying to find investors who I don't know today. So how am I going to be visible to them? Well, there are a variety of mechanisms that you can get into, which all start with building relationships and building a crowd or fan base that you can start today. So if you're a city such as Paonia and they want to have a greater tourism base, they would try to find out everyone who's been to Paonia over the last 5, 10, 15 years, and they may have this because they came into the Chamber of Commerce and picked up an information package, left their information. They may have gone on to the website and asked for a download. They may go to the state of Colorado and go, please give us everyone who asked for the tourism guide for the state of Colorado. They may go to the local hotel and said, can you get out your guest register, and can you contact each of those people and do that. Well, now we're trying to figure out every way anybody who has been here before, and this still is going to hit a wall where sooner or later we've talked to everybody who's ever been in Paonia, in the last 20, 30 years. So what else can we do? Well, what is Paonia known for? Anyone? Therein lies our first problem, okay? And not picking on them, because I could say the same thing for Aurora or big city or anywhere else, is they may not be that well known. Now, I'm going to be in Vail next week, and inherently everybody goes, yeah, Vail skiing, and the fact I can't ski anymore is not going to do me any good. But the city needs to create its own brand. The community, like a company or a product, out there, has to have a brand, and each community is going to have to try to figure out what are they going to be known for. Is it that this is a great place to go hiking in the summer? Is it a great place to go to get away? Is it because we just put in a new vineyard and there's some great local Colorado wines in Paonia with vineyards actually on both ends of town? Is it the new brewery that happened there, which is as great as local thing, but there's 375 other breweries in Colorado, so maybe that's not distinguishing enough. There could be any number of things, but the community's going to have to figure out what it's got. It's got to sell it well, and it needs to create this larger theme. So the people responsible for this are going to be the individual businesses and property developers who are seeking the capital, who are going to spread the word to everybody in their networks. And we refer to these networks as stakeholders. So their suppliers, vendors, resellers, everyone who's on their team, service providers, all their customers, all the different people that they have access to. And collectively, that's going to be quite a large number. And I think, I guess I don't have it on this slide, they're going to reach out. Then you're going to ask the community to reach out. So you want the chamber to do its thing. You want the Economic Development Center to do its thing. You're going to want to work with the press and the media. You're going to want everybody in the community aware that you're doing this. You don't want to be able to go down the street and bump into a neighbor in your community and go, hey, we're doing this thing with opportunity zones, and they go, I have no idea what you're talking about. So you're going to actually do a community barn raising, so to speak, where you want everybody to help out, everybody to play their role, everybody to share the story, and that means that you're going to have to create all these stories at different levels. The prospectus is the global story, then the individual raises for the different campaigns, and then you're going to want information on the community that's going into each of the individual packets. You're going to want to get everything out there on social media, and you're going to pound this drum as loud as you can, as effective as you can, as long as you can, until this money has all been invested. And it may end up being a very short period of time, or it may be spread out over a few years. But nonetheless, this is an opportunity that may not repeat itself for another 5 to 10 years after this. But everybody has to be engaged. So as we're talking about doing this, you also want to look at incentives for people to pass the word along. So every one of these businesses should talk to their customers and then give the customer a reason to spread the story even further, to create a viral cascade of information. So I'm working with a nutrition bar company right now, and they're giving out Christmas coupons to their customers. Then they're going to everybody that is in their network, and they're passing out coupons to them. And when they give the coupons to their customers, there's two varieties, one to the customer and one to everybody who's in the customer's network. And then they're going to go to other people who are manufacturing complementary products. So because this is an outdoor recreation area, then anyone who makes a shoe or a backpack or outdoor gear, they can go to them and talk to them about whether or not they can cross-market between the two. So it ends up at the end of the day very classical saturation marketing program, and everybody needs to be involved if you're going to be the best you can be at this type of activity. One of the things to help along the way is we're talking about doing demonstration projects. When you come to talk about anybody doing something for the first time, you usually will get a, sounds interesting, but I'm not sure what you just said. So we're trying to identify existing projects in motion that fit all these 12 categories and map them out, and it's going to be kind of like a reality show for the interim. And then we're trying to wrap that around in a pseudo-documentary with documents and instructions, so it becomes a do-it-yourself kit for a community to look at and say, yes, we can do that here. So if I want to put up a quad housing project and I'm going to use equity sharing in order to finance this, and part of the equity is going to come from opportunity zones, part of it's going to be standard mortgage financing, and maybe I've got a community foundation or somebody else in a 2 or 3 or 5 tier capital stack. Yes, okay, let's do that, because that project can probably be replicated in every city, in every community, everywhere. There isn't a community that doesn't have a housing shortage right now, and most of it is on the low income side, where affordable housing, attainable housing are the terms of art. But we're suggesting maybe there's some additional solutions that are completely privately funded going down that path. We're also looking at the fact that as interest rates rise, getting mortgage financing will be harder to debt leverage a project, and the cost of that money is going to go up to the point where it may be better to actually use opportunity zone money for 100% funding on a project, because the rate of return to investors may be superior to anything they can get in a bank or a less risky type of opportunity. So lots of different options in here that are being looked at just in housing. Then if we cross the board into education or into infrastructure, private-public partnerships, where the private sector may step up and lead, bring certain money to the table, and then back that up with government money or some other form of funding. We need these projects done as quickly as possible so that communities can have the aha moment and go, yes, I see what you're doing. I understand now what an opportunity zone investment is, particularly for this type of a project. We can do that too. Let's get going right now and see how quickly we can get that done. So at this point, we are working on a number of projects, and we are looking for sponsors to pay for the cost of putting together the do-it-yourself kits to be associated with this particular deal. And we will, I'll come back to this in a couple other fashions in a moment. We need innovation. We have a problem today which led to these distressed economic communities, and it's probably fair to say that if we don't change how we go about funding a project, we may not actually make a significant difference, or we may have no impact at all. We talk about equity share, where in a housing project, instead of a standard mortgage, you have a third party who puts up part of the money and they share in the appreciation of the property over time. Stapleton, when they redeveloped it out here as an airport, the city retained the ownership of the property, and then they sold the houses so that it reduced the cost of getting into those particular units in order to put people into them of lower income who otherwise couldn't get there. There are several different variations on a theme on that that are under consideration. If we get into education, skills training, it's possible instead of a student loan, we do something that's a job training program with a percentage of income that is pulled out to pay for a lifelong learning 30-year time frame for education instead of a 4-year or 2-year degree. Something where you are aligning the employer with the community, with funding, with the person who's being educated to try to drive them quickly up their career path for the benefit of everybody who's participating in the program. There's a lot of things out there today that can be solved if we simply finance them differently. As an example of that, people talk about solarizing a house. Well, at one time that was not economically feasible, but now Solar City and a number of other companies have proven that you can get a payback on that that will justify an upfront capital investment to put solar on a roof. So the question then becomes, why isn't solar on every roof? Because if it's financially feasible for one house, it's got to be feasible for all houses. But we haven't reached that point yet, and maybe Opportunity Zone funds will give us that opportunity to do that on an individual building or on a community grid of some kind. So we're going to be looking at innovation all the time as we talk about what we can or cannot do with Opportunity Zones. One of the ideas I'm advancing is the concept of an Opportunity Zone fund for the purpose of advancing individual businesses and properties and raising capital. So what we're proposing is in an individual community, they do their own first Tier 1 capital campaign and raise somewhere between $50,000 to $250,000. Then every $50,000 that's raised is used to advance the cost of a capital campaign for a business or property in the community that is repaid out of the proceeds of that capital campaign, so the money rolls over continuously for the full 10-year cycle. So we can set one of these up as a standalone business. Its primary purpose is to support other businesses and properties in raising money, and we can raise money within the community of a large enough scale. $250,000 is not a big deal for any community, and $250,000 will allow you to do 10 projects a year approximately in raising money, or up to 100 over a 10-year life cycle. When you think about that, an individual capital campaign of one of these businesses in Colorado can be up to $5 million under a limited offering, or $2 million under crowdfunding, or a private offering. You have an unlimited dollars. You go at the federal level up to $50 million. You can bring a lot of money into a community by taking this money and leveraging it a little bit further forward by creating a local Opportunity Zone type of a fund.
So how does that work? How are you using that money? I guess, can you give like a practical example?
Sure. So question is, if you set up an Opportunity Zone fund, how would that money be used? So let's say, for example, we go into the city of Paonia and we raise a fund of $250,000. So what we would do then, from crowdsourcing, which could be done locally or nationally, doesn't matter. We're bringing in money from outside. We're actually improving our community by importing cash to this point. Then say you have a local brewing company and you'd like to raise money or Opportunity Zone funding. You would apply to the fund for support. And if you were selected, the Opportunity Zone would hire all the talent, pay for all your promotional cost, all your platform cost, everything you need to do so that you could tell your story in the best possible fashion, hire the dream team and go make this happen. Then once you hit your minimum goal in your capital campaign, which probably is $500,000, you would pay back that $50,000 plus another 10 plus some equity into the fund. So the fund is actually growing and generating its own rate of return for the original investors. But you would have approximately 6 months in which $50,000 would be deployed to your benefit to help you succeed in your own campaign, and then rolled over. So with $250,000, I can do 5 at a time, and we're allowing about 6 months from start to finish per campaign.
And the people supporting that are basically using that $250K, they're within the community? Is people living it, or is that kind
Doesn't
of
have to be.
Okay.
What you're typically going to expect, and back to who you know, is who your primary investor is going to be. Consider your community to be the center of a bullseye, and your best potential source of people who have the most to gain or benefit, monetarily and non-monetarily, are people right in your own backyard. So if you're in a small community, you want to talk to, you want to make it available to everybody. So I'm recommending investment crowdfunding as a structure where both non-accredited and accredited can participate. But I want to make sure I round out this 250 because it's my starting point to go out and do a whole bunch of these projects. So I want to, again, I want to talk to the entire community. I want to give them all a chance to participate. But as long as I get to my 250, actually I get to 50, I can roll over at 50 by itself. If I get to 2, that's 2 a year, 1 every 6 months. If I get to 250, I can go more. And in a large community, if I'm not breaking it down by neighborhood, In a larger city, I might go to anywhere from $1 million to $2 million, $5 million, because we have lots more businesses to work with. But this would then serve as a catalyst of this. Then everyone participates, and this is what I mean. I want my whole team to show up. I don't want anybody left out. I want to give everybody a chance to participate. Some people will say no, some don't have the time, some don't have money, but they can still volunteer, and they can certainly spread the story. If they have any kind of social media, they can tell people, look what we're doing in my backyard. This is pretty cool. The thing is then, if you work these all together, we would start all the way back with the prospectus. So we create this prospectus, say it has 10 businesses in it right now, and I know that I'm going to ask each of those 10 as a requirement of getting in here that they're going to post it on their website, they're going to push it through their social media, and then when they get to their capital campaign, this is going to be an attachment or a link within that, so they're pushing it out to everybody they know. And if they have a good crowd or they're building a crowd, that's a wave. Then the next business, same thing. So I've got 10 different people who are shouting their individual message, but also the collective message of the community. Plus I have everywhere in the community that is repeating this message. And this will make you more visible just as a consequence of normal social media. Now, somewhere in here, the businesses are going to have to be distinctive enough, the community's presence is going to have to be big enough to do this in order to gain the biggest investment into the community. But if you don't do these preliminary things, you have no chance. Then as we go through this to the demonstration projects, the demonstration project can be your first or a concurrent project with your opportunity fund. So then if we move over to the opportunity fund, knowing that we've raised this money, one of the conditions is you've got to bang a drum for the community as a reason to do this. So it all continues to build together, and this all works together to create a much stronger message, which is more likely to be seen and heard. And if it turns out that they're reaching out to someone who's in San Diego because they're a nephew, then they may already know somebody in the community, and that may be all the nexus that's necessary for them to put an investment here instead of somewhere else. Sense of urgency. As I mentioned earlier, there is a reasonable possibility of at least a market correction on Wall Street, which will cause people to cash out of their stocks. They will immediately be recognizing capital gains on any excess over what they paid for it, and they're going to want to be thinking at that moment, do I put my money back into the stock market, which looks like it's going into the wrong direction, or do I want to put it into one of these opportunity zone investments? And that's the moment when they're thinking about that for the first time, that you need to be visible as a community going, come over here, put your money in my backyard, because if you miss that opportunity, they'll move the money somewhere else, and it may be locked up for the foreseeable future. The community will miss their opportunity at that point. So I've told this as a metaphor, and I continue to use it because it works well, but view a community like being in the Australian outback, where you only get one rainstorm a year. And when that rain comes through, you're going to have all the buckets out in your front yard trying to catch all the rain you can, because it may be another year or 2 or 3 before you see another rainstorm. This is what communities are doing with their prospectus. They're getting all the businesses, all the properties, community projects that were marginal, or they couldn't quite get them there, or something else that was holding them back. They're going to try to spread them all out and create a beautiful picture of what can be done in this community with this money. And they need all these things ready to go, so that whenever an investor rolls out of a stock or property and wants to do a rollover, there's an automatic place for that money to go. And the person is aware of it, there's a relationship, there's a degree of trust, and this matches up with their personal values and missions, and it may offer a significant rate of return on top of that. So all these are being woven together to create a tapestry of something that is very attractive to someone who may not have known you yesterday, says, well, I like what you're doing there, I want to help out with that. That basically covers the primary part of what I wanted to get in tonight's program, is that at a community level, it is possible to collaborate and work together to the benefit of each individual opportunity zone campaign that is in that particular community. The state of Colorado is creating profiles and templates for what the prospectuses should look like. The key thing that I take away is that once you have the prospectus, then you need to communicate it. You have to put it in what I call the flow of traffic where it can be seen. We talk about a billboard that's on I-70 that may be seen by 65,000 travelers a day, or one that's 4 miles to the south of I-70 where it may be seen by 20 farmers, over the course of the next 30 days. You have to be in the right place with the right message ready to go in order for it to be viewed. The communities have this opportunity to work collectively. This gives them more efficiency. They can spread this cost out. And so the net consequence of this is that if you did it by yourself, it may cost you $50,000. If you do it as a community, maybe it cost you 45, maybe 40, because some of this cost is being shared by everybody else in the community at the same time. The more you can lower that cost, better chance you have of getting the job done, the more businesses and projects you can get through the system. Yes, Mike?
Carl, who do you think is the best point person in general for these communities to get them to buy into this has to happen sense of urgency? City managers, do you think, or is it someone outside of the government?
So the question is, who should be the champion for a community to lead the charge, get them organized, recruit the necessary resources? My experience has been that the private sector can always move quicker, better, faster. They may not have all the resources they need, but they typically are less encumbered by policy and politics and other things that may slow them down. They don't need to go necessarily through a budgetary process to add this to a line item or deal with those kinds of things. I am recommending when we do this is you find somebody within a community who is viewed as a local, so that they have a reputation that's positive and progressive within that community, who agrees to be the champion for the community. Then they would work with city officials, they'd work with other county, regional officials, they'll work with the social organizations, the churches, other groups that are looking to see this take place within their community, and they act as the ringleader for all these different things. Now, obviously that takes time and energy and money, which is why one of the approaches I've suggested is to create an opportunity fund for the community, because the cost that we're talking about can be laid off on the collective raises of the different businesses within the community. Whereas if you tried to do it on your own, you would either have to be a community foundation or a social cause or somebody else who has a checkbook and is willing to step up and make this happen on behalf of their community. So that could come from different groups. You may see it in a Kiwanis or Lions social organization, community organization. You may see a local church step up and be a point person. In some cases, there'll be a natural community leader or someone who has the time and energy that's willing to devote to this. But again, not every community is going to have this or the resources. But this is what appears to be the best path to take to try to organize everything. Then case studies, I mentioned this earlier. We're talking about doing case studies on everything. Last meeting we talked about housing. I mentioned earlier on education. What we're seeing today is that there's I'll call it a need to transition from an old job to a new job. There's a lot of new jobs being created that didn't exist 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, and the skill sets for those jobs are just being formed or being formulated, and it's going to be necessary to come up with quick, rapid, skills-based training to support these new types of jobs as they are created. Rick and I are working on issues in controlled environments for growing anything indoors. almost all these jobs didn't exist 5 years ago because the technology didn't exist 3 years ago, and it's changing while we're having this conversation. And so we're not talking about unskilled workers coming in and picking tomatoes from a vine. We're talking about robotics, maintenance, HVAC, humidity controllers, things of this nature. And these are skilled to highly skilled technicians who you want to get up to speed in a hurry and then hold them at a level of the state of advance of technology throughout this entire time period. So how do you go about doing that? You need all kinds of new mechanisms for identifying experts, pulling out the information, putting it into educational formats, putting it into distribution, matching that with the cost of funding, and aligning it with the businesses in a community. But almost every community, again, I've talked to says, yes, we need more things. Now, it may be to help veterans, it may be at-risk youth, it may be for some special cause, but by and large, it gets down to we need quicker, better training that's more modular and more concise so that it can be kept current as we see the world change around us. So we're looking at different models here that are there, and again, once we have a model, and in some cases we may end up with 10 or 20 models, some of them fitting different purposes within a larger ecosystem, some simply alternatives within the same ecosystem. We're going to try to capture these and put them in kind of a do-it-yourself kit that can be posted on the internet for all communities to look at. And then later on, our expectation is we'll build out complete, not do-it-yourself kits, but things where you can buy it as a package and pull it off the shelf for a fee-based arrangement. If you want to bring in a team to raise money for you, or you want to build that greenhouse, there'll be somebody who can do that without you're having to go through the time and struggle to try to figure that out on your own. We mentioned issues earlier. There's questions coming up all the time. One of the questions that came up at the Bridge to Opportunity Conference is how much of a return on investment is necessary to attract an investment. And as I did a poor job of explaining then, and I'll try to do a better job today, every investor has a different set of criteria on what it's necessary for them to see in a return on that investment. So there is not a single answer that you can say applies to everybody. As an example, we could be in a community where nobody has a whole lot of money. They might only make an investment of $100, and their only thing they can do with their savings is put it in a bank in a CD that's earning 1.5%. If we put together a multifamily housing project where they had a stakeholder in that and they earned 4% on their money, it would be a 400% increase in what they're making while it's helping the community. At the same time, they might even be living in one of those houses, so they get a threefer out of the deal, and then they may also be the person who built the building, so they got fourfer. We keep going down this list. So everything's different. Now, if you're talking with a lot of the people, some of what we saw at the conference, we're talking about large dollar investments and large scale projects. And these are typically going to be the people who come in for high rates of return, and this is what they expect and what they're looking for. And it's primarily focused on just the return or financial return on dollars. As we get deeper into community projects, the other benefits, the jobs, the increase in quality of life, the support of the local charities, these improving the infrastructure, providing a place for your children to live when they grow up, these become the more dominant reason for somebody to make a local investment in a community, which is why they're not going to be necessarily attractive to someone in California if we're working with a city in Colorado. But it may turn out that everybody within 10 miles may think this is a great investment in my local backyard because I benefit so many different ways from that. So as you're talking about formulating an investment, every time you do a project, you have to figure out who cares, who's to benefit from the success of your project, and then you have to figure out of those people who have the money you need, who are most likely to make that particular investment, and then structure something that meets their particular need. You should use all tools of marketing available to figure out who they are, why they care, what kind of deal structure is going to work. Run 4 or 5 deal structures past them before you lock it down in an offering memorandum and go to market with it, because otherwise that's a blind stab, and if you miss, you miss. Or you gave too much money away, which happens a lot in a number of offerings. So there is no single answer. Each deal is different. Each deal has its benefits, both monetary and non-monetary, and each investor is going to look at those differently. And we joke sometimes that between morning and afternoon, they may still look at it differently for the same person. So different factors will come into play there. But you generally look at what is their alternative. Okay, if you have money in the stock market, it looks like it's going to fall. Anything may look attractive for a short period of time. If you're going to put it in there for 10 years, you're asking yourself, am I going to get enough cash out of that in order for this to work for me? Some of these businesses that we're funding with opportunity zones are throwing off ordinary income, and there's enough cash to keep everybody happy. Some of the bigger projects, they're trying to go for the full 10-year time with no transaction taking place, so you only cash out on the other end of 10 years. There's no cash available during the 10-year cycle. And if you need to pay your taxes in 2026 in an opportunity zone, you may not have any cash out of the project to pay that. So again, you have lots of ways of structuring deals, an infinite number of ways of structuring deals. And the best thing is to figure out who cares, what are they willing to do, talk to them first, and just by asking them their opinion and what they want to do is a form of engagement and trust building. Instead of sticking an offering in somebody's face saying, you should give me money because I determined this is a good deal for you, you say, no, we did a lean startup approach. We talked to 100 different potential investors. We got all their feedback. We refined our proposal, and we know that at least a significant percentage of people will say yes to this particular deal. That one's going to sell. And it's on a case-by-case basis at that point. So this is something that there is no standardized answer for, other than you need to know your investors as a market, like a customer, and what's going to drive them to make an investment decision. Yes, Michael?
Carl, what are your thoughts about an area that's not an opportunity zone, that's on the edge of an opportunity zone, and the opportunity zone going to those communities that are just over the border and asking those businesses if there's something that they can do that would enhance those businesses and then use that as a way to start investment?
Yeah, so the question is can you reach out to people who are not within an opportunity zone? And the general answer is yes, because opportunity zones and communities are not matched up one-to-one. You'll often see the way the maps fall out that a community's cut in half, or certain cities I've looked at, the northwest quadrant of the city's in an opportunity zone, but the other 3 quadrants are not. But if a community project is going forward, benefits the entire community, anyone who benefits can be touched, asked to support the campaign, to spread the word, to put in money of their own, because there's a benefit accruing to them from that investment. Too often, a lot of people are not aware that the business next door is going to have this benefit to them, and they're never given an opportunity or not aware of having that situation. Whereas when we talked about bringing Amazon's second headquarters to Denver, everybody talked about 50,000 new jobs and the good and the bad of stress on transportation and housing that would occur from that. But a single business can have a very dramatic impact on everybody within a 5, 10, 25 block area. And if it's a larger business, it may impact everybody within the region. And if you tell that story, it should be included. So people go, oh, what's in it for me? Well, here it is. I'll show it to you. So that brings us to the end of the program. These are the sites we have set up to assist people. One is, this is the Meetup site for today's event. We're posting up, as I said, new events. Right now we only have one more scheduled before the end of the year. That's on December 11th, and we'll be doing a case study project, which most likely will be a commercial property and how opportunity zones can be used to supersize that. Then on the Invest Local Colorado website, We've created an open source library where we're posting up articles and case studies and the links to the video for these events and anything else that we can find. And then we're also working to recruit experts to come in and answer issues on everybody's behalf. So these are two sources that are within my control. Then, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to the state of Colorado. We are identifying at the local level, some of the communities are starting to post up their local resource boards. There are some larger organizations, and in particular tax and accounting lawyers who are working to look at all the different issues on how opportunity zones may work. And then we're starting to see some some actual funds who will come into a community and help. Right now, when you talk to a large fund or a group that says they're going to start a large fund, they're as challenged as we are in trying to figure out what can and cannot be done within the rules that have been set up. Particularly challenged are those that was talked about at the conference are either super large funds because they have to move that money within a fixed period of time in order to preserve the tax incentives. The other ones are those who are investing in a variety of types of projects which each have their own business cycle, their own cash exit point, and it makes it harder to come out of those funds because it's not going to be a single crisp solution. Yes, John?
What is your sense of the community's acceptance of adjusting zoning so to accommodate the investment and the investor's goals?
So the question is what have I seen so far in communities being willing to make zoning variances or assist in zoning to attract a business to the community? What I've seen so far is that most communities haven't thought that far forward in terms of this specific project. And that's with regard to opportunity zone funding. There are communities who are very aggressive all the time, everywhere, in order to try to recruit businesses into their communities. And they're already working on this, and this is just an additional thing for them. There's other communities where zoning is a challenge, where the ability to get a zoning change may prevent you from doing what you want to do in a specific community. And the existence of opportunity zone money or other capital may serve as a major influence to them to get them to change or to adopt a variance of some kind. But you're going to need to come in and kind of tell your own story to the city as your own advocate and explain why their participation in this matter, which is a non-monetary thing, could still work to your particular advantage. Other questions? So last but not least, as I said, I'm talking with several groups, several communities about working with them on getting organized. I have a draft proposal. I've got a couple hard copies and happy to send anyone a digital copy of this. Go in and create a prospectus. That's a no-brainer for me and my team because we do this all the time. But it's somewhat passive at that particular point. There's no certainty anyone's going to see it or it's going to get the job done. So we've suggested for the same amount of money that is being discussed for doing just a prospectus, we would do two additional things. One is we do a demonstration project, which means we would start a capital campaign right now, tomorrow, on a selected business that we would use and that would be associated with one of these 12 problems that we're talking about that the entire community can get around and see a net benefit from supporting it. And we would walk it through its paces in order to show everybody how this would work. The second thing is we would start an immediate capital campaign to set up an opportunity fund in the community with the goal of raising at least $250,000, $50,000 minimum, but our goal would be $250,000. And for the same $50,000 that they've been talking about for doing a prospectus, we would do three things. And against this backdrop, we would do even more in that we would put on public education sessions regarding how to invest in a Main Street business. We would help get the community organized, we recruit the local champion, and the idea is to create a complete solution for a community that has the highest probability of getting everything done and getting the type of result that we're looking for. So I'm currently talking with 3 counties and 2 cities, and happy to talk to other groups out there. We're trying to set this up so that under the DOLA grant, you can, it needs $25,000 from somebody in the community or outside the community in addition to the state money. But within the Opportunity Zone Fund, that money, all of it, either $25,000 or $50,000, can come in as a private investment and participate in all the projects that go through that fund over the 10-year life, and it can be set up as an Opportunity Zone investment. So it gives an opportunity for someone to seed fund this at a local level with a relatively small amount of money with a huge impact over time to that community. And by coming in privately today, it means that your prospectus can be in draft and online before the end of the year instead of sometime by summer, which may be the slower route that you may go through if you get too many levels of sign-off from the community before you can get it going. But I'm happy to share this information with anybody who wants it, who wants to look in their own community or act as their own community champion, or who would like to build their own team to go out and support communities to do this. My vision is that we have 65 counties, 64 counties in this county. I'm not from Colorado, so I have make that one mistake. But we have 126 opportunity zones, and I think we could even break that down so we may end up with as many as 400 to 500 definable communities, which are not necessarily limited geographically, but could be by social cause or by industry or some other factor. And we're looking at some large projects that would be multi-community oriented, again, for the purpose of more resources all focused on a single target. So thank you all for coming. I'll be here to talk to everybody and answer any additional questions you might have one-on-one. And we'll get this video up, and I'll get the slide deck out to you tomorrow, so you'll have that to start with.
Yeah.